Hi, I'm Rajneesh.
And I'm Bridget,
Welcome to TerreScience.
the podcast where reality matters.
Welcome to TerreScience. It's a great pleasure today to have my friend Maxime Bilet with me. If you don't know Maxime, Maxime is a co-author of Modernist Cuisine, which was very highly and well received. He did majority of the images of that very famous book, and I will let Maxime tell us about his journey a little bit. But I am so glad to have Maxime on our podcast today. So before we get too far into other topics, let's start with Maxime. Maxime, welcome to TerreScience.
Rajesh, thank you so much for welcoming me. You've been a dear friend for a long time, and I have always wanted to continue our collaboration. So it's a pleasure to start this next journey with you.
Thank you. Well, so we have a tradition on TerreScience that before we get into deeper topics, we'd like to our guests to tell us a little bit about their journey. How did you get to where you are?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I never imagined for a second when I was in high school that I would be a chef, that my passion for food, which had been present since I could remember, would turn into a career. It was just, in that generation, it was still not the food culture centric realm that we now inhabit. But that passion was so powerful. I mean, I would live with walking around with cookbooks anywhere I went, and would want to taste things, and just the food was my way of connecting to the world, and my way of sharing with others since a very young age. I studied fine arts and literature university, and thereafter I actually thought I was going to go in the Peace Corps, but with my French citizenship being in the way, I decided to just see what uh, the being a chef might mean, and it all happened very quickly from there. I became head chef almost immediately in a restaurant that in downtown New York, just thrown into the deep end. Like did a tasting for the owner, and he gave me the keys, and I just I learned on the spot how to run a restaurant, how to engage with customers, how the business of food from the hospitality industry side works for 1 year, just every day, um, discovering my capacity, my connection with food being no longer simply a passion, but a business, a platform. And I love restaurants. I love working in restaurants. I love being a chef. It takes a lot out of someone to run a restaurant. It's important to give credit to those who provide us with all these incredible foods, because they give their souls, their every moment, to make that possible. And but I wanted to learn more, so we moved to the UK right after that 1 year stint at the restaurant being Jack's Luxury Oyster Bar in New York, and I applied for a sorry, what's it called? Losing my words. I applied to the Fat Duck for a stage, and this is where they really they use every ounce of your energy in exchange for you being able to witness something incredible. And the Fat Duck at the time was the #1 restaurant in the world. I had always been of the mind that all this science stuff was a fad, and I was an artist, so the food was an expression of the person. It didn't require all of these tools, and that changed very quickly at the Fat Duck, where I discovered that this scientific understanding of food and the tools at your disposal could amplify your creative capacity in the kitchen to levels that I had never imagined. So that shift came very quickly. I had a great experience there. They offered me to come back and work in the development kitchen with them, and that's really when the sort of the shift from being a restaurant chef to someone who looks at the bigger picture of food, who creates the products that people buy, who thinks about food systems on a logistical scale, who looks at the systems, it started to come about. And again, this was 1 year, so 2 years after college. Now I suddenly end up in Seattle, Washington. Never been here in my life, and it was for a book project being led by Myrhvold, the original CTO of Microsoft, and we were originally planning on writing a book about at the time, sous vide cooking or water bath precision temperature cooking, which was not a ubiquitous term at the time at all. Finding a water bath or sous vide cooker, as is kind of the misnomer, because sous vide is the actual vacuum machine, was incredibly expensive and hard to find. Now, I found one at the grocery outlet for $20 a few months ago. It's in these 15 years, things have evolved quickly. But once we started collaborating on this book, it went from this one subject to a 5-volume encyclopedia about the art, history, and science of food, and with Nathan's vision and the fact that our food lab was in the midst of all these completely different projects. Like there was a laser project for killing mosquitoes and malaria that was above our heads. There was a full machine shop just adjacent to the kitchen. So when it came to creating those images, we had access to incredible engineers and scientists to build these sets for us and all that. Anyway, so it was really about how we visualize, and how through on paper, through a book, how do we communicate all of these possibilities? I mean, endless possibilities. We were, up until just a few months before publishing, with Nathan and I, we were trying to jam in, like extra ideas, making sure every idea that we could exhaust from our imagination was introduced into it as here's how food works. Here's the science. Here's this very visual context for how to understand the mechanisms that are in play when we sear steak or steam broccoli or boil carrots. But then also, here's how you use a centrifuge in the kitchen to make something delicious and incredibly unique out of something very common. So this transformative potential of the merging of science, art, and into the food creation process.
It's amazing because as a biologist, we think about imaging, we think about getting closer to the subject, but I think it's easier because we prepare, or we have a chance to prepare the slides, prepare things. I can't even imagine thinking about in a sous vide machine water bath. How do you get inside while the food is cooking? Because I've seen those images. Somehow you managed to actually capture what was going on as the molecules of food are going through, are transforming.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I don't even know how you achieved that feat, but yeah, that book clearly is still one of the highest standards, I think, in visualizing what happens to food, the science of food.
And you make it. I mean, it's a great. I hadn't used that word necessarily in that context, but really, yes, all of these, the act of working with food is transformative. Whether it's the way that you cut it, whether it's how the heat changes its structure and texture, right? How and then looking ahead, how that transformative experience allows us to really reconsider how we're doing something. but it has to start with the premise of the fundamental understanding for us to get to understand the transformative and really look forward. And so I really, I thought, I mean, this was Nathan's vision for establishing a baseline of scientific understanding, which myself, not too long prior, had a lot of aversion to. I mean, it was science from high school. This is the memories of being disconnected from the subject because of how it was being conveyed through again topics and examples that I did not connect to. In the food realm, when it was tied to food, the degree to which that I embraced the scientific principles, because it was that connection was clear. I mean, the purpose of it clear, and I was myself invested because of that visualization. So it's yeah. I owe a lot of credit Nathan for establishing those scientific principles in that way, and allowing us to just go as far as we could from that premise.
Okay. Well, I mean, and I think you have kind of stuck with that theme as well, because I remember visiting your space, Imagine Food, where you were putting all these things together in reality for people to be able to come and experience, and it was a great experience to be in that space in Seattle. And you've then continued also to be an advisor to many new endeavors in foods. So I thought maybe we can start to think about where you think the food is going in the future. At the moment there is so much discussion about food, disconnection in the system, lack of nutritional value, maybe environmental issues. Where do you see food going in the future?
Oh boy. I mean, there's, it's my aspiration that there would be a direction that was in harmony with what's necessary, and that all parties involved in creating these new food supply chains, new just new perspectives on food would be, yes, in harmony with one direction, which is making sure that our food supply is not exhausted by again the abuses we are now well informed of, but also go beyond the idea. I think a lot of there's a lot of great brands. There's a lot of highly principled contributors to a greater and richer food system, food culture. But there's also just a lot of noise. There's a lot of ideas that are being sold that are not substantiated by the very thing we need, which is the value for the human body, the genuine nutritional contribution from that food. And then there's the experience, which I think we've been taught as a global consumer. Maybe I should not say global, but certainly in Western culture, we've accepted that there's a compromise that we're willing to make for all these conveniences, and it has diluted the standard, the expectation of not having to sacrifice one thing for the other. It's not necessary, but it is ingrained from the production to the moment of experiencing that food. There's a compromise embedded that we should discuss. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm glad you mentioned the difference between what we need, what our bodies need, versus what we are sold as we need as an experience. I think the difference between that, and I would just like to use one example of that, is like plant-based meat. So that whole industry, when it started, went off so largely, and the premise was to produce products that would taste and look and feel like meat for people.
Right.
And what is sold in that package is that it's better for the environment, eat less meat, which I think there is no doubt that there is the production of meat with cows and cattle and causes a lot of methane. But
Absolutely.
how does but it has it's so I think these are ideas.
Right.
What is the real impact? But then at the same time, it itself is processed food,
Right.
and you're starting with a completely edible and nutritious product, pea protein or whatever protein it is, and then we are processing it just to create taste and texture. This is this such a complex topic, but then, like you said, it's the experience that is sold to the public, and the public goes with it and makes that compromise. So everything you said is right on the marco there. So so what do you think? What are your thoughts about this type of trend, and in the future where
I mean, I think the premise is absolutely based on virtue. The premise that because the fact is these plant-based foods are these plant-based meats are for the most part not directed at the vegetarian or the vegan. They already are very happy not eating animals, and although there are some meat-like replacements that I was a vegetarian for a long time, but enjoy is maybe a psychological phenomena of reaching for your earlier memories, of taste and texture, perhaps. For the most part, these plant-based meats are directed to the omnivores. It is intended to create a shift in our behaviors towards the things that we love: the hamburgers, the hot dogs, the sort of the greater some of the I'm sorry, the volume from a volume-based perspective, like the hamburger is the best place to start in order to shift the balance of our habits in eating, and the intended impact to lessen the how the beef industry and all the all of the detriments we know that has for our environment, to subside that to the degree that's possible.
Yeah.
So the question is, has that happened? I mean, has that made a shift in how many steers are being grown and slaughtered and and processed? Are the emissions lessons? I think it's hard to tell at this point in time. You have a lot of people who adopt it because it sounds healthier.
Yeah.
Now, that question is also quite difficult, because if you get a healthy cow and ground meat from that cow, it's not the same as getting it from these sort of massive. I don't know, actually. Let me just pause here. What's the term for the large?
These large places where they have multiple animals, multiple heads.
Sorry.
Yeah, multiple cows in large places, very compact.
Right,
Is that right?
thousands. They right. Erase all the forest, and then you've got all those emissions that it's
right.
It's cutting down the Amazon for pig farms.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking about the term. What's that term for the? Anyway, so within each of these categories, whether it be meat or plants, there are subcategories that really matter. So if you're, and this is where the consumer's role is more important than the people who produce the food. You can you can go buy hamburger meat from a producer that has a humane process, is not greedy, doesn't try to have too large of a setup, and in that case you are supporting someone who has virtue and who contributes to a good food ecosystem. On the plant side, it's kind of the same. I mean, like you said, these amalgamations or these mimetics of meat of the meats that we often enjoy, the hamburger. So these are very highly processed. These are highly processed foods. They have quite a large thumbprint in terms of the energy used to get to that final formula.
Right. Yeah.
The number of things that go into it, these complex formulas. There's a lot of varying information about whether or not that is better than the good meat producer. But then if we're going to compare it to some of these like to be fair, like to be honest, horrendous like sprawling steer farms where the conditions are atrocious, the quality of the meat is quite poor, and yet in a frozen hamburger, who knows the difference? You've got the beef fat that's grilled and it tastes great with the cheese, and it's like it doesn't really, like the person who experiences it can't really tell the difference in that setting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah,
I think
the plant-based is better than that for sure, right?
Well, no, I agree. Would you say that these things they come to play mainly because an idea is sold to large investment agencies or investors individually, or the investment, when these things only occur when there's a big investment which has a potential to generate a lot of revenue, and then there's a whole story that needs to go along with it. But to make the larger revenues, the operations have to be scalable, have to be large. So in both cases, like you said, the larger meat processing, we don't like it. The larger pea growing only to produce artificial meat. Also, so maybe it's time to rethink that we should not develop our future food systems based on volumes of revenues, but rather more on what the bodies or individuals need.
Right. And that's the North Star, right? It's the beacon that we aspire to for people to see. How do you how does that shift happen? I mean, from the perspective of the producers, it's a business, and and some have a moral barrier, and some don't see it that way. They just see assets, and that's what it is. I mean, it's really you're not gonna go there in that direction in order to stimulate big change. The consumer, the general consumer, us, right? We get to decide if these people succeed or not. We really do.
Right. That's the point. Yes.
And to be fair, like there's a limit to what I just said, is that it does depend on whether or not we have the financial ability to choose what we buy. I mean, you really have that decision, that financial capacity to make that decision. But if we do, right? If we have the privilege of deciding where we invest our income, you can spend all your money on clothes and electronics and things, all these industries that have huge margins. So you're paying paying $150 for those Nikes, and it costs them $30 to make, and so then you've got some overhead, and then they make that big difference. In food, the margins are tiny. The farmer, all the interim processing and packaging and transportation, and then the vendor, the retailer, everyone takes their cut, and so we expect cheap food at this point still, and the learning here is cheap food comes at a cost that is so much worse than making a slightly different decision about where we invest our funds in shifting that view of food is worth more than what we pay for it this time, or that what we're willing to invest in it.
Yeah.
And so it's how do you guide that decision making process? Because those foods that we're talking about, the going to your farmer's market instead of your like giant local supermarket, it's a decision. But at the end of the day, when you make the decision to go and support those who have real provide real substantial plants and meat, the flavor will be so much better. The nutritional value will be so much greater. So it's a win-win. But it's changing a perspective which is so ingrained in our culture that food should only be worth this, and then suddenly the value of hamburger meat goes up 15 cents. It's a big deal, and you're like, okay, the more expensive it is, the less we'll abuse it. That's good. Typically the more expensive these things will be. Typically, some things are just being sold at a high price for marketing purposes because of the perception of value, but typically you will pay more for quality for food, and it's worth it if you have that privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just briefly I'll touch upon another trend. Then I think we should talk about what you just pointed out as the biggest issue, which is consumer understanding, because consumers drive any of these trends. So one of the new trends that is starting is cultured meat, where you can grow meat in a petri dish. Now I think that the science is still behind. There is a lot more to learn about muscle tissue, how it grows in cultures, and so that's another trend which now is actual meat, because when we go to plant-based meat, the composition of the protein from plant is completely different from what you would get from the meat. But at least in there, the cultured meat, okay, it's meat, but again, the density, there are so many unknowns there as well. But it will be sold not because whether it's healthy for you or not, but it'll be sold because you're saving the planet. See, this is the thing that consumers are told, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
So
sorry, George, you finish. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, so I was just going to lead this into So I think both of us are agreeing that it's the consumer education and awareness of the consumers that really is going to matter, and with their understanding of what they're being told, and maybe their decisions need to be reimagined, their habits. It's a very big task to change people's habits.
It's a big task. It's a big task. And I have a few points on that. Obviously, that's a complete break from the current culture, and there's a lot of thought process that has gone into it, and I definitely see some things that I want to contribute myself, but on the topic of cultured meat, I think as I remember the first time I read an article about this, the in vitro hamburgers, this is 12 years ago. It was in the New Yorker, and for a second, my first response to the concept was, they used the word Frankenstein, the term Frankenstein meat, and it does kind of like we're going into the realm of cloning one another, and and again these futuristic films from the last decades, imagining that would potentially happen, and here we are. But once I processed the concept, it would be it's a game changer. I mean, it's if we can get there, then we so long as like anything, like you pointed to, so long as it is scalable, that in order to produce that in vitro meat, you don't have to now draw from another resource that we're going to use in order to produce it. So it's always a balancing act if that's the mindset that informs the production of any of these things, and not just will it be profitable or how profitable will it be, and and you kind of we don't realize until later what it costs on somewhere else, right?
Well,
But
yeah.
if we can get there, then I think it will be of great benefit, and we would eat the things that we love. The beef fat, like for example, grilled beef fat. That smell it's intoxicating. It's our primal selves are. You smell that a steak or a hamburger on the barbecue. Even when I was a vegetarian for a while, I could just enjoy the smell, because it's but if we can get to that point without causing death, without harming, and doing so in a way that is far more sustainable than all of these cattle and pig producers and slaughterhouses and all of that the logistics around killing lots of things in order for us to be fed would be tremendous.
Well, I agree. I think
how
that
far
that's
we I don't know. Yeah.
well, I can tell you from the scientific perspective what I worry about, and it's not unsurmountable, but it is a very large challenge. And as a plant biologist, tissue culture has been around for a very, very long time. We grow. You can take plants and grow an entire new plant from tissue culture, and it's going to be like any regular plant, because it's in a way it's a clone. A plant, most of the cells are totipotent, where they can be by hormones, they can be controlled into growing a whole plant or just roots. Or animal cells are not like that. So to grow muscle tissue or fat tissue, of course, there's going to be some hormones, but the question is, do the cells grow the same way? And there is a lot more science that needs to be done to see. And I'm not saying that it's harmful or anything. That's a totally under other issue. I'm talking about texture, flavor, whether it'll grow in the same way that like the smells you're talking about, or whether those smells will slowly be if this becomes very popular, then we'll forget what that used to smell like, just how we have forgotten what a real peach or a real plum tastes like.
and to be forgotten, you would have to have experienced it at least once, and that's the thing. Our generations are getting farther removed from the memory of something that was exceptional. That is the reference point for everything else. Like the reference now is diluted when you're talking about the generic food. But yes, that like the nectar. Like I'm going to sound like a food snob, but the nectarine on the side of the by the orchard on the side of the road in Toulouse on a sunny summer day, just like, and it's just the sourness, the sweetness, and it's like juicy, amazing. There's nothing like it, right?
But
it's the environment, and then it's the quality, and you can't ever convey that moment in words to anyone else. But you actually want others to experience it that way, right? Now, when it comes to, I have a question for you. When it comes to the plant tissue replication, now I've seen Anna actually do some of this with, in a very limited way with her succulents, where she can take a very small root system, and then the plant regrows from that, like just beginning. It's thing, right? I mean, it's being, but you obviously, this is your arena. When you're generating plant cells, or like does it require substrates, or does the plant itself do that?
So what happens is that plants have the ability to, like stem cells. Stem cells can differentiate into different, and plants, most of the cells in majority of plants that we can grow from cuttings, have those cells have the ability to differentiate into roots and shoots they do need, they need to be in soil. They need to have some
Right.
nutrient and growth. Some growth has to be supported in some way, either in artificial media or in soil or somewhere. But as long as their growth is supported, their cells will differentiate into the plant parts. Animal cells do not, they naturally don't go back to pluripotent cells or stem cells. There are mechanisms that can be used to bring them artificially, but yeah. So that's a big difference. But even with the plant cells, the very early stages of tissue culture is very hard. We can't do that with everything. Only some things that naturally can do it. The other thing, some of the other things that we have tried with different hormones, and we have pushed the envelopes really, really far, and we can grow plants. But the animal cells are even harder. That's where,
No, because what I'm hearing is that although the work obviously is the human application of this understanding, right? You're following a very natural process. The plants have that inherent capacity to do so, right? And
exactly.
you're using that in lots of ways that take lots of directions towards utilizing that inherent capacity, to do so. And with animal cells, it's not encoded in those cells that they would grow, like become other once separated from the whole. So there is a Frankenstein aspect to this, but
that's that's why it was called that.
Let's hope.
But leaving all these things, these trends, like we discussed, that there is obviously a business aspect to this, and a story that needs to be told to support the business aspect. But then coming from the consumer's perspective, the consumers care about their health, but they want their food to be cheap, like you said, and they want it to be so convenient that they just lift their finger and food appears. And in the global markets, we can get anything at any season from anywhere. So it's these conveniences are, we're spoiled. Essentially, we're spoiled.
We're very spoiled. We're very spoiled. That's exactly how I feel about it. And I find myself, sometimes I'll go to different of the larger supermarkets because it's there, or because there's something there that they don't have elsewhere. And I walk through the produce aisles, and there's just these things. Some of these supermarkets are so big, and you walk around, and there's all this produce. Some of it's just been put in there, and some of it's on the edge of being spoiled. Then there's all the prepared foods. There's just like so much abundance of choice and things, and I just wonder, so much of this, if it's not other than the packaged, long expiration date food, so much of this is going to be wasted. There's just, it's just because there's this idea that like the multitude of choices is the thing to seek. We are, by and large, encouraging a lot of waste. And it's just
absolutely
balance. You have all so many people who don't, who are hungry, starving, just would be so grateful for just one fraction of that just volume of food, just a fraction of that. And I think we've come to a point where we've got so much information, so much data, so the technology is so advanced, far ahead of how we actually work with food. By the way, that's definitely another subject. And all this information, all this noise, all of these players in the food game who are selling the new idea, the next idea, the new nutrient that's been discovered, and now it's in this bar, and just like, and if I weren't in the connected to food the way I am, and not so curious about food, if I'm just someone who likes food, but is a banker or any other profession, I I would be very confused if I was them, you know,
But
and so
yes,
of course, you know, then what kind of identity does that person have? Or, you know, what kind of identity do they see in themselves in regard to food? How do
yeah.
they choose? You know, there's and it's both fascinating and you know, potentially tragic that this is where we're at.
Yeah, no, it is. Because of this access, like you're saying, identity, some people, like you were saying before as well, some are vegan, vegetarian. I'm omnivorous. I eat fish. And so identity with food has become part of who people are, and they tend to stick to that in most parts. And it's very hard. But at the same time, how do we change? So I think we've discussed all these issues and problems
Sure,
that
sure.
exist. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the solutions. Starting with the space that you created, like Imagine Food. Can you tell us, your vision of what that was, and where do you
Yeah,
think you
yeah.
want to go with it in the future?
Sure, sure. So on the heels of, you know, publishing Modernist Cuisine and Modernist Cuisine at Home, what I wanted to do was to share all of that, you know, great information that the vision that we had provided in book form, and do so in a way where, you know, in contrast to the limited spectrum of, you know, an expensive book or an expensive restaurant, uh, provide access for the general public, and definitely in geared towards children and young adults, and a realm of food related experiences that it gave them a greater understanding of their the sensory system, how smell and feel and color and sound all contribute to how we perceive, you know, any given food. And so yeah, I was I benefited from a grant from the mayor's office at the time for this 3,000 and then some square foot space that used to be a furniture store. And, you know, because of infrastructure changes in Seattle, a lot of these spaces were vacant, and I said, yes, we'll take that space, you know, having no idea how far this would go, just with that seed of an intention to create such a space. And it was incredible how many people, just even those walking by, became contributors to that vision. They saw the seed, they saw the first installations we were making, these edible walls, had a wood worker who built an indoor, its whole beautiful wood frame and for an indoor garden with all of these, you know, sort of ecosystem insights. And we had botanists from Oyster University working on that whole again little mini ecosystem in there. We had artists coming to paint murals of different, you know, like foods, and some in very true form, and some in these sort of fantastical you know, interpretations. And, you know, after a couple of months, we had established this realm that people could just walk into and discover so much more about something that they do every day. You know, their breakfast, lunch, and dinner, if we are so lucky, right? Then, you know, this is one of the most common habits, or, you know, routines that we all have. You know, need to have to get energy from food. We have these meals. How do we experience them? What are we thinking when we have them? Are we present? Are we not present? If we're present, are we actually considering, you know, what's happening? So that was the goal of really just having people discover themselves in relation to food, enrich their
Yeah.
identity.
And
Um,
I had the good pleasure of visiting that space, and I remember it was exactly how you're describing. It was like food was at the pedestal, and you get to experience every little aspect of your interaction with the food, the smell, the touch, the flavor. It opens up slowly, and I think I came back appreciating every single bite. Like you said, of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It makes
Right.
such a big difference when you, instead of just eating to eat, you eat to have experience. But
Right.
the experience with food is like very intimate. Each person may have a different experience with the same food as well. So I mean,
Absolutely.
it was a great place. So where are you headed with this? What's in the future?
Right, right. So this was I mean, it was a pop-up, with the mayor's grant, and we actually were able to, I mean, they extended it for almost a year, and so we really kind of explored every, like, avenue of how the theme of food could be introduced into experiences that were informative of science, of art, of just sitting at a table and appreciating the fact that, like, the sitting, the silverware, every aspect of the food experience matters. I mean, it
Yeah.
has some impact. It's just whether or not we are aware. So
Right.
having that awareness ourselves of just, and I've seen how transformative this was for people. So many, we hosted so many different groups of, whether it was like kindergarten or, young adults, um, soirees with chefs all creating these different, like transporting people through different periods of time, and putting grass down, and
Yeah.
having a little picnic inside, like
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
did all the experiences. And so we know the impact. We know that it's
Yeah.
something that works.
Mhm.
How do we, yes, how do we bring that to on a large scale, a food exploratorium,
Right.
to the public? Well, that's certainly a vision, an aspiration that I hold. And on the back end of creating that space, um, we had to shift to something that was sustainable. A sustainable model is, okay, we'll investigate the exploratorium side, but like culinary invention perspective. And ultimately, I wanted those two to coexist. One being able to provide the income, to support the team, and also to fund that space, and to just have a business ecosystem, in the food realm that functions. And so
Right.
yeah, so that's we investigated both sides of that picture, but they require you have to have both for
Yeah.
that to be
Yeah.
to work, and to do it in the way that where you're not cutting corners. When you're giving people a food experience, you have to give them things to taste. You have to, it really has to be a generous thing.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it
so,
has to be, memorable. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I've been trying to. Yeah, and as you know, I've been trying to do the same thing, but more in the food growing and agricultural side, the food production side. So
Sure.
I have a business side, and then more recently, I've also been trying to look into developing community gardens locally where I live in Manteca with my one of my colleagues, and we are looking at spaces. And I think if we find a city, a location where they're open to such ideas, having a
Yes.
combination of how to grow food in the food exploratorium, how to then experience food, how to know food, and what is the value of food, not
Right.
just to you, but to the environment and to the planet.
Absolutely.
I mean, one space that if it can contain all of this, we need more of this information for
I,
the
I, I think
future people.
I, yeah, no, you're onto something. I mean, it's my mind, thinks food exploratorium, and it's definitely a contained thing. But really, what you're pointing to is exactly what it should be. Is that you have to be grounded in a natural setting. I mean,
Yeah.
like it starts with the soil. It starts with
Right. Right.
with like it's not some romanticized story about like, farm to table, or, farm to table is always like it's industrial farm or good farm to table anyway, but it's this most essential relationship we have with the earth. And, there's a lot of disconnection for many generations from, where our food comes from, but it's right there.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
right there. You go to the park, it's right there, except, instead of a park where you've got a playground, there are columns of things growing that that we eat. And so to start there and to have, and to that, for that to be the roots of it, and then to be able to explore, then when that food has been taken from the soil or tree, how we interact with it, how in the kitchen we transform it, and what that transformation of each of these foods means for our experience. So it's a complete picture, absolutely.
Complete picture. So I think that's something I would love to explore this idea together with you. In the future we can try to work and see if we can put this vision into action somewhere. And
let's say that not that we should think about it. Let's just say that we're gonna aspire for that. That's
okay. We're going to aspire, absolutely. No, that sounds like a good.
Okay, this is absolutely the thing that has to be. I mean, that would be so special. I think, and we're talking about nurturing others. We want others to see what we see, because what we see is something special and virtuous, and that really is transformative in those, these words that get abused. I get stuck on the word, but it is truly transformative for people that experience that. And so we must.
But it has to be done in the right way. It sounds like something that anyone can pick up and create something like this, but it needs to be conscientiously developed with all the issues and with all the potential solutions, and with education, consumer education in mind. Because like we started and we've been discussing, the common theme is consumer knowledge, consumer choice, consumer habit. That really drives food for everyone. So yeah, indeed. I think it's if I'm correct, it's Marion Nestle, right? She says that we have two votes. One is when we vote, and the other one is when we vote with our dollar for food.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need to get rid of the term consumer altogether, because it does make it sound very passive. It's a very passive experience, right? We're like at the trough waiting to be to be fed, and it's like, oh my goodness, that is so sad to think. But people don't actually think about themselves that way. But if you consider even the word itself, it is an expression of something that I don't think people want to be, right?
No, like, I love it. I think you're pointing out something very important, and I just felt like chills, because I feel like what you just said reveals something. Everyone who eats food is not a consumer; they're participants, they're collaborators.
Participants, exactly.
Right? They're participating in the whole food process.
Right.
And then
you have a lot of power in the consumer concept, because that makes you, it's you actually have the hands, the will, the voice, the ability to move. You have all the capacities to be far more than the consumer concept.
So how about I think just to cap our discussion with some positive thought. I think maybe what we should think about is each individual should be a contributing participant in the food chain. People can contribute by what they buy, even if they're consuming it, but they're contributing by the choice. And that, so if everyone is a contributing participant, maybe we can improve our food chains, our food system.
Absolutely. And that word consumer, by the way, when you eat your food, you are the consumer. It's just that's the definition. You're consuming that food. But so you gotta separate the dynamic, right? It's the consumer is not the boss. The consumption is yes, we at some point we will eat it, but what happens in between?
Right.
You're not consuming at that point. You're deciding. You're making
Yes.
choices. Right.
Yes, yes, and those choices are really important.
Yeah.
But and because those choices, that if more people make certain types of choices, then you impact the process part, because process part is business. But what's happening today is that the processing part is telling us stories, influencing the choices of people. I think we need to become a little bit the other way, where we dictate what we want, and then have the processing deliver it to us.
Right.
Uh,
No,
and
it's
that, I think,
a
yeah,
story of, I mean, empowerment of you know, and I'm going to stop using the term consumer because I was about
yeah.
to.
Me too. I like, yeah,
But empowerment of each of us not to rely. I mean, it's like you said. Well, the convenience leads to a certain type of laziness, and and again, that's the compromise made and accepted. But it compromises the experience in ways that are not considered. We have so much information thrown at us, and so yes, a lot of it comes down to the ways in which we those who have a sense of like real information and not just powerful ways to transmit that information, but creating environments where that information is brought to life, and then
yeah,
it's so much bigger than some marketing strategy on paper or some brand
right,
logo on a which is just more things you buy, but the experience of that
right.
is the thing that transforms the mindset.
Yeah, that is very important. Yeah,
is
yeah, it's the experience, like you're describing the nectarine. If you don't taste that nectarine from the side of the road, you will
that's right.
never know what you're missing.
There's not a foundation for all of
It's
this,
right,
these very small, seemingly small experiences have tremendous impact on us.
right,
So
right,
it's just one that switch that is there gets pressed, gets lit, gets and suddenly that our perspective, that individual's perspective on so many things is completely shifted.
right,
There's clarity,
yeah,
there's curiosity now, there's connection,
right.
and therein lies that empowerment that is really essential to having people make different choices, better choices, wherever you want to
Right.
qualify, choices that actually benefit themselves in the short term with a richer, more delicious relationship with food, and long lasting change
Right.
in
Yeah.
those ecosystems that we've been discussing.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's so important. I think we should we should continue to think and develop this, and figure out how we're going to make this happen. But we will definitely need the help of everyone who's listening, and
Absolutely.
everyone who thinks about food. And thank you so much, Maxime. It was such a wonderful discussion. I enjoyed every part of it, and I learned a lot. And I'm going to stop using the word consumer. So yeah,
I learned a lot too. This is the like these conversations are remarkable because we're independently, we both have a lot of consideration. We want to contribute something that has meaning. But as soon as you have these conversations, we're just those insights inform one another, and it becomes something far greater. And you see things,
yeah.
hear things differently, and it's so I really appreciate you inviting me on to have this conversation with you, and I do hope we continue it.
Absolutely. We will definitely continue it as we start to develop this idea. So more. So, well, thank you so much for joining on TerreScience. And everyone who's listening, please remember to like and share, because this information is important, and we want it to become common knowledge that food is your choice, but we have a lot of choice, but we should make our choices with a little bit more information. So with that, thank you, Maxime. Anything else you would like to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, the other than choices, it's just have more fun with it. I think it's done in two schools as well. It's both like, how do you say, convenience, which is, like kind of the thoughtless aspect, and then it's the like overstimulation of concepts, ideas, what to do, what not to do, and but it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be lighthearted, and you want to be present. I mean, the one thing I think just, like as a note, with COVID, there was all these obviously very difficult aspects, but I think for many of us, it made you realize how special it was to have all these foods, in the context of a restaurant, or in all these environments that we no longer had access to, and so just like we met, like thinking about how special these things are, like being present, and really honoring those things for how impactful they are on our lives, not taking it for granted.
Yeah, and part of the COVID, some people lost the sense of taste as well, and that was a big issue. So yeah, no, I think that you're right. That experience of the pandemic revealed how important these things are in our society to us. So yeah, absolutely.
I think generally we took it a little bit less for granted, and that's kind of the point, is going against the grain of accepting the compromises of convenience,
right?
And recreating connections to the food where it's don't be that there's a lot of fear around people, like I don't know how to cook, just of failing in the kitchen. There's so many examples of how we can quickly be disconnected from it. But there's so much can be so much fun, and making like ruining a dish is nothing. It means you tried. Having courage in the kitchen, having curiosity, just and keeping an open mind.
Yeah. Great. Well, with that wonderful thought, thank you, Maxime. And this is to be continued. So absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Two things that motivate me are the beauty of our environment and the uniqueness of our planet, of course, but also the people I've met and the fact that people do want to play a stewardship role.
Welcome to TerreScience,
the podcast where reality matters.
I thought microtubules might be processing information at this basic level. Here we are, another 30 years later.
I can actually say it. I'm going to be a scientist.
Excellent, you will be.
What was fascinating is what emerged from that was also a transformation in their consciousness.
If I try to do that, we're going to go down that rabbit hole.
Because I wrote it for people like you to get a sense of field biology, for women to appreciate the challenges.
In that process of detection, that molecule momentarily is bound to us. It becomes part of us. So it's this incredibly intimate encounter that we have with the things of the world around us.
We are consistently asking what's wrong with the student rather than what's wrong with the educational system today.
Maybe somebody will be inspired to also go into this field someday too. That would be amazing.
Well, I hope so.
Welcome to the TerreScience podcast.
The podcast where reality matters.
My name is Rajneesh. I'm a plant scientist at Carnegie Institution at Stanford University and an entrepreneur attempting to upgrade our food systems and our planetary footprint for the benefit of Earth and humanity.
And my name is Bridget. I'm a current graduate student and former vertical farmer, and I'm very passionate about public education and increasing access to healthy and nutritious foods. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube under TerreScience, or follow the links in the description below to learn more. We'll see you in the next one.